Attorney Olivia Carter had never been one to back down from challenges, but this time, she felt that this case could completely change her life, leaving deep marks not only on her career, but also on her soul. Graduating with honors from one of the most prestigious colleges in the United States, and coming from a humble family in the Bronx, Olivia carried the weight of daily overcoming social injustices. She knew exactly the barriers she would face when taking on the defense of Marcus Bennett, a young black man unjustly accused of a crime he vehemently swore he had not committed. Every step taken in the Chicago courthouse seemed to remind Olivia of the prejudice that permeated the judicial environment. The imposing hallways lined with cold marble and filled with austere figures gave the impression of suffocating any hope for true justice. The statue of the Goddess of Justice in the lobby, carved in immaculate white marble with blindfolded eyes, ironically symbolized a selective blindness, incapable of seeing the pain of minorities and the prejudiced biases that often defined verdicts before they were even pronounced. As she walked through the courthouse, Olivia felt the inquisitive and distrustful gazes of fellow attorneys and staff, silently questioning her competence. It was not the first time she had defended someone whom the authorities had already condemned in advance, but this case had particularities that disturbed her even more deeply. The presiding judge, Richard Coleman, was known for harsh sentences and controversies, especially against defendants from marginalized communities. A powerful man with a traditional surname and a reputation for being difficult, Coleman seemed to cultivate a blatant disdain for female lawyers who dared to challenge his authority, especially when it came to a black woman like Olivia, who never lowered her gaze before his arrogance. In the past few days, Olivia had completely immersed herself in the case. She gathered testimonies, meticulously examined police records, analyzed forensic reports, and identified every possible inconsistency in the prosecution's accusations against Marcus. According to the police report, Marcus had allegedly assaulted and brutally beaten a wealthy businessman in a dark alley downtown, robbing him of a large sum of money. The prosecution claimed to have an eyewitness who identified Marcus with absolute certainty, but Olivia, with her meticulous diligence, had already found significant loopholes. She discovered witnesses who could categorically attest that Marcus was in a completely different part of the city at the exact time of the crime. Marcus was a shy and reserved young man whose eyes clearly reflected a deep and indescribable anguish. A devoted son of a single mother who worked tirelessly as a cleaner, he himself worked hard in a small local market to help support the household. He had never had any trouble with the police, until suddenly he was arrested based on a vague, anonymous tip, a generic description, and unfounded suspicions. During the interrogation, he was subjected to psychological violence and treated as guilty from the very first moment, without any fair opportunity to defend himself. On the eve of the hearing, Olivia met with Marcus in the cold and soulless visiting room of the penitentiary. The worn-out walls covered in dark mold stains seemed to hold countless stories of lives devastated by injustice. Sitting at the icy metal table, she carefully placed the folders meticulously organized with documents proving Marcus's innocence. With a firm yet empathetic voice, Olivia gently held the young man's trembling hands and promised to fight with all her strength until the truth prevailed. That promise was not just for Marcus, but for all those whom justice systematically chose to forget. Stay strong, Marcus. I know this isn't easy. I need you to believe in me and in the people I've contacted. We're going to prove you're innocent. I can't take it anymore, ma'am. They treat me like I'm guilty of everything, like my skin color is a confession. Trust me, please. We'll face this process step by step. We'll have the chance to question the prosecution's witness, expose contradictions, and present your alibi. The judge will have to listen, whether he wants to or not. Marcus looked at Olivia, noticing the confidence in her words. He felt that this woman, who had fought similar battles, was his best chance at freedom. Yet, fear still pulsed within him. What if justice wasn't truly blind, but deliberately nearsighted toward those born in certain places, with a certain skin tone? The next day, the courtroom was busier than usual, as the press had already begun highlighting the case. A promising attorney, a young black man on trial for an alleged brutal crime, and a judge known for harsh sentences, made for the perfect sensationalist headlines. Reporters shouted questions in the lobby, but Olivia remained silent. Now, every move she made could be exaggerated, and that could harm Marcus's defense. The internal bell announced the start of the session. Olivia walked into the courtroom with firm steps, keeping her head high. Marcus was led in by an officer, handcuffed, and sat next to Olivia, visibly nervous. On the other side, the prosecution adjusted their arsenal of papers and evidence, confident in the conviction. And presiding over the trial, Judge Coleman, with his austere gaze, fixed his eyes on Olivia as if already preparing for a confrontation. The tension in the air was palpable. Olivia knew she needed to be precise and strategic. When she had the floor, her speech was meticulously constructed to dismantle the prosecution's argument. She reminded the jury that a man could not be convicted based on mere assumptions. Murmurs in the courtroom grew louder with each inconsistency she exposed. When prosecutor James Callahan brought in his key witness, George Whitmore, Olivia immediately noticed his hesitation. Under pressure, he began contradicting himself, stumbling over his own words. When Marcus revealed that he had no tattoo, contrary to Whitmore's claim, the impact was visible. The jury murmured, the prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, and even Judge Coleman, always impassive, seemed slightly irritated. The courtroom grew even more tense when Olivia presented new evidence collected the night before. The defense had obtained the testimony of a friend of Marcus who had been with him in the industrial district on the night of the crime. Judge Coleman tried to downplay the importance of the testimony, but the defense reinforced that it was consistent with security camera footage. With each new piece of evidence, the prosecution became more cornered. And then came the decisive moment. A man burst into the courtroom with a crumpled envelope. It was Robert Sanders, a night watchman, carrying recordings that proved Marcus had been miles away from the crime scene at the time of the incident. The room erupted in murmurs as the prosecution tried to discredit the evidence. But after an initial forensic analysis, it was clear, the footage was authentic. The prosecutor attempted to argue that the videos did not definitively prove innocence, but Olivia, calm and meticulous, asked Marcus to replicate a characteristic gesture seen in the footage. He drummed his fingers on his belt, exactly as the man in the video did. The resemblance was undeniable. Suddenly, a new figure entered the courtroom. Alan Hughes, a retired detective who had worked on several cases of racial injustice. Hughes claimed to have information that not only compromised the case against Marcus, but also the conduct of Judge Coleman himself. According to him, the judge had a history of manipulating cases to favor certain interests. The revelation caused a massive uproar, forcing the prosecution to retreat. Judge Coleman had no choice. After hours of deliberation, he delivered the final ruling. In light of the new evidence, I order the immediate acquittal of the defendant. This case is closed. Marcus collapsed in tears. His mother rushed to embrace him, holding him as if she would never let go. Olivia closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a mix of relief and anger. Another young black man had nearly been condemned for a crime he did not commit, but on this day, the truth had won. As she left the courthouse, Olivia felt the weight of the battle won, but she knew many more would come, because as long as the system remained unequal, she would keep fighting. Fighting for Marcus, for so many others, and for true justice, which still seemed so distant for many.